when a gut feeling saves you from the man waiting for you in a doorway. So, this is a story from around 10 years ago when I was 17. At the time, I kind of just brushed it off because nothing bad ended up happening to me, and I just downplayed it too. Shit just happens when you're a woman walking alone at night. But looking back now, I realized how creepy it really was. I was coming home on my own on a Thursday night after being out at a pub with some friends. We had been out a little more centrally in the city, so I had to take a bus on my own to get home to my residential neighborhood. I had done this route hundreds of times, so I didn't see it as being particularly dangerous, especially as I live in a fairly nice neighborhood. It was only about 11 p.m., but because I lived in the outskirts, and it was a business day, when I got off the bus at my stop, it was absolutely dead and there was no one around. Again, this didn't spook me as it was only about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the bus stop to my house. As I turned down a long street that leads towards my house, I noticed a guy walking further down the street. This put me a little on edge, but I was reassured by the fact that he had his back to me and was walking away from me down the street. As I kept walking down the street, I noticed the guy turn around and stare at me. That's fine, I thought. I always turn around when I hear someone walking behind me at night, so there's nothing really weird about that. But I noticed, as we got further and further down the street, he kept doing it more frequently. He kept checking that I was still walking in the same direction as he was. At this point, I'm starting to get pretty freaked out as I am painfully aware that we are the only two people around. Just as I was weighing up what I should do, he turned down the path of one of the houses to our right, and I breathed a sigh of relief. He's going into his house. I was just being paranoid the whole time. The houses in my area are terraced, with the front doors being kind of embedded into an enclave at the front of the house. What this means is that from where I was standing, about 50 feet away, I couldn't actually see the front door of the house as it was obscured by the wall. However, I saw him walk down the path and disappear into the front door enclave, so I deduced that he was letting himself into his house. I can't describe exactly what made me feel like this, but after that initial feeling of relief wore off, I suddenly got this really bad sensation, so I stopped walking and just stood there. There was this tiny voice in my head that said, "What if he's just faking you out?" The feeling became so strong that I stepped off the pavement and ducked down behind a parked car and just waited. After a couple of minutes of crouching behind the car and staring at the house, I saw a movement and my heart froze. The man came back down the path, out onto the street, and was looking around, looking for me. He must have been waiting for me in the doorway, knowing that if I kept walking, I wouldn't see him until it was too late. Unfortunately for him, his hiding place also meant that he couldn't see me, so when I didn't walk past as he anticipated, he had to come back out into the street to try and work out where I was. Looking back now, I probably should have called the police at this point, but as a scared teenager, my fight or flight took over, and I sprinted down one of the roads running perpendicular to the street that we were on, as I knew I could use it to take a slightly longer route home. I didn't stop running until I got home, where I quickly locked the door behind me. I didn't even think to wake anyone in my family up. I just went to bed and then woke up the next morning and went to school. Part of me thinks that on some subconscious level, my brain must have registered that I didn't hear the front door shut after the man approached it and told me that something wasn't right. Lesson learned: always trust your gut. I don't care what the police said. Running still felt right. This happened to me a long time ago when I was 10 years old. I wear glasses because of an accident at school. It left me nearly blind in one eye, and I had to wear an eye patch for months after. I was still off school about a week after the accident, and really bored, so I decided to head down to the library. I lived in a small town, and I knew most people and always felt safe. Until that day. I was about a street away from the library, and a red car drove past. The road was small enough that it wasn't even paved, so they passed by quite close. I didn't pay it much attention until it suddenly appeared behind me again. I remember not being overly worried, thinking they just asked for directions, but the driver rolled down the window, didn't say anything, and started staring at me. This made me super uncomfortable, so I started walking, and he began inching along beside me. I sped up. He sped up. I started to run, and so he screeched forward, pulled in front of me, and opened his car door. That was enough for me to nope the hell out of there. Luckily, there was a park I ran to that he couldn't follow. Afterwards, I ran home faster than I ever had before to tell my mom, who called the police. I managed to describe the car and the driver well enough that they quickly found him just down the road. When questioned, the man said he was just worried about my eye and wanted to check on me. Thinking about this day still gives me chills.